can cry.
It was an unfriendly harmattan season afternoon, some few minutes past 3 o'clock in the central west of Alkebulan. The northeast trade wind was blowing in from the Sahel Desert, and the temperature was around 9 degrees Celsius. Everyone on BR Island was experiencing the fever of seasonal changes, with the dusty dry air gyrating in the unpleasant atmosphere. Strangely and shockingly, the nocturnal and diurnal animals were feasting in the broad daylight in the faded field. Against the indigo-hued sky that cradled the sun, the moon bloomed half full, casting a pale glow over the estuary beaches where desert and oceanic wanderers moved with quiet purpose. Above them, countless migratory birds sang in a soaring chorus, journeying to distant lands and new homes. Through the savanna woodland, the sun's splendor filtered in shards of golden light, piercing the canopy as if eager to whisper stories of fleeting pleasure to the world below. Significantly, the vultures were ultimately circling the smoking cloud as they danced around the unsightly cloudy sky in search of food, using the rings created by the masses of warm and cold dusty air. Fluttering its wings, a vulture's perceptive eyes caught a glimpse of the earthly carcasses from a height barely above human sight. In contrast to the hawk, which glides, flaps, and swoops in an unhurried descent, the vulture twisted and plunged downward slowly. A woman was reclining her back against a dry tree with greenish-brownish leaves in the nearby forest. After staring at the firmament for a while, she turned her head to the left and right as though searching for something close by. With what little strength she had left in her body, she shouted out a name, but the woodland was quiet. Resuming her position, she began counting the number of vultures flying as far up in the sky as she could see. The woman was complaining, although not to anyone in particular, about the dreary mood. "They will find so much to eat here," she breathed out. Although the presence of the vultures in the bluish sky at that very period saddens the hearts of the inhabitants of BR Island, it was difficult to say what was responsible for the disappearance of the vultures in the past few months. Some survivors of the war on the island claimed that the rebels killed and eaten the vultures. Few people believed that the shortage of food for the birds might have driven them away. The vultures could be seen when and where carcasses are available, otherwise, they will starve to death. The vultures had helped scavenge the human carcasses, and this has reduced the vulnerability and possibility of the inhabitants being afflicted with disease outbreaks that could have come up as a result of decomposed bodies littering all over the places. "The vultures are back again," she said to the younger woman who had just walked past her in the jungle. She ignored her. The younger woman focused on the wind-driven dance of the parched trees. Although the trees were nearly devastated by the fighter bombs, she observed that there was a difference in the way they moved when their leaves were still greenish as opposed to their new greenish-brownish tint. She imagined the greenish and greenish-brownish colored leaves speaking different languages. Her noiseless mood could not be perplexed or frightened but went on in fortune or misfortune at her private pace, like clocking during thunderstorms. "They will help to clean carcasses and serve as food once again for the rebels," she said to her again. The younger lady murmured, turned around, and gazed at the polluted river in the forest. She imagined the language the water speaks when it travels from the ocean through the seas and rivers to the little streams beside homes. Instincts sent the enticement of near danger to the two ladies with unequal forces in their hearts. Fear would not let them consider the nature of the danger before them and the means of avoiding it. The lady was still counting the vultures up in the skies. Promptly, her act was seized by the thunderous sound of warjets that rumbled in the atmosphere. She hurriedly lay back on her stomach flat on the earth, and the younger lady did the same as well. Everyone in BR Island does that when they perceives the noises of battles from the air. An experience of pains that causes harassment, not to wink at an unknown danger or celebrate with it, since it is not in man's power to provide for everything and escape from the general march of events. Nobody dared move an inch, and no one dared touch an itching part of the body. The jet hovered around the forest, looking for lives to terminate. After about 10 minutes on the cloud, then the noise came, bam. But nobody could say if the jet belongs to the rebels or the government. The noise stopped after a while, and the jets flew out of the region. She quietly walked toward the younger lady. She was still gripping the earth on her stomach. "Come on, Agnes, it's gone now," she said with her terrifying voice. She stood up and folded her hands around her chest, as they were both scared of what may happen afterward. Cries from nearby and afar, the weeping of those hit and destabilized by the explosives poured out by the war jets. Some lost someone, some sustained injuries, and others mournful for those that were weeping. Peace today, trouble tomorrow, and the war remain unpredictable. Human and animal forms, Agnes said, her emotion was fading, she began to weep as well. The war had been before I was born, when would they stop killing the innocent people who knew nothing about its source? She cried the more, looking up to heaven above the earth. When the war started, people said, it's too stupid, it can't last long, but though a war may be too stupid, that doesn't prevent its lasting. We only saw the beginning, but no one knows how it is going to end. Now is ravaging the cities, villages, and our farmlands, home of the rich and poor. The war is destroying the shrines and is killing the gods, who will lend a tongue to the priest of the shrine. Here we are again, Carolina said with tears all over her face. Let us leave Carolina, let us move to another peaceful place, let us find a way to refugee camp, Agnes suggested. Carolina looked up the skies, the vultures had increased in numbers, but the end of the war seems unpromising in the skies that looked uninviting with the smokes of bomb powders hosting the vultures in the atmosphere. Let us go to Bunce Island, some of the chaps are planning to go to Bunce Island tomorrow morning. Let go with them, only a few young men are alive now, even the rebels don't pity women anymore, she said to Carolina. How far is Bunce Island from here, and how long before we will get there? Carolina asked the younger lady. I don't know how long before we will get there, but I am positive the worst life in that camp would be better than our best here. My mind is completely fiddled, taken, and destroyed by this war. I knew nothing about its sources, I've never slept with my two eyes closed ever since the rebels renewed their attack. Fear and worry have been the mouthpiece of everyone residing in this island. Many people are dead already, some members of my family weren't left out. Let go before we die too, Agnes said in the most worrisome mood. Do you think it's a good idea? She asked inactively, moving a few steps back and forth. Carolina nodded in affirmation. Agnes, we shall take the risk. Tomorrow morning, as you have suggested, I hope we will find better life in the refugee camp at Bunce Island, Carolina said to the younger lady. Let us leave Carolina, let us move to another peaceful place, let us find a way to refugee camp, Agnes suggested. Carolina looked up the skies, the vultures had increased in numbers, but the end of the war seems unpromising in the skies that looked uninviting with the smokes of bomb powders hosting the vultures in the atmosphere. Let us go to Bunce Island, some of the chaps are planning to go to Bunce Island tomorrow morning. Let go with them, only a few young men are alive now, even the rebels don't pity women anymore, she said to Carolina. How far is Bunce Island from here, and how long before we will get there? Carolina asked the younger lady. I don't know how long before we will get there, but I am positive the worst life in that camp would be better than our best here. My mind is completely fiddled, taken, and destroyed by this war. I knew nothing about its sources, I've never slept with my two eyes closed ever since the rebels renewed their attack. Fear and worry have been the mouthpiece of everyone residing in this island. Many people are dead already, some members of my family weren't left out. Let go before we die too, Agnes said in the most worrisome mood. Do you think it's a good idea? She asked inactively, moving a few steps back and forth. Carolina nodded in affirmation. Agnes, we shall take the risk. Tomorrow morning, as you have suggested, I hope we will find better life in the refugee camp at Bunce Island, Carolina said to the younger lady. All the combatants, the rebels or the government forces are buying their weapons from the same source. Are those humans selling it not guilty of war crime? Maybe they are not, they are the peacemakers, mediating between the groups of fighters to end the war, right? But in the hour of the night when the earth is dark, they will trade their guns to them to kill each other, Carolina expresses. Let the world end this hour, these minutes, and these seconds at this point in time. O God, destroy all humans from the surface of the earth as in the days of Noah, Agnes said with a heart full of sorrowfulness. Horrors in the middle of hellfire, each day passes with little trust of hope to persist, disheartened without confidence in what will happen next. It could have been me lying on the earth demised, I am no longer afraid of it, everyone around has prepared their psyche for death, I have accepted the next thing that may come, although I can't predict when or how. Carolina said. Agnes, it doesn't need to be this way, things are beyond us now, and our faith is no longer in our hands. The risk is worth taking. Tomorrow morning we shall go with them to Bunce Island, she said. They made up their minds to go with the fellows, hopefully to find a peaceful life in Bunce Island. A few hours afterward, restlessness took over their minds. It seems to them the next morning will never come. Uneasiness plunged them into their world of hallucinations of unimaginable, haphazardly riotous in their minds, and inconsistency to the spring of their destiny shock absorbers. The rumbles in their stomachs were humbling their flesh. What an irregular and unbalanced world. Their tongues glued to their mouths, no one could talk, none was ready to talk, and they were just waiting for the dawn of another morning. The heaven over their heads seems dispelled, and the earth was ready to swallow their feet. Sleep fled away from their brain, and the dreams in their sleeplessness were headaches of irrational nightmares. Now, life seems to be in between that of the Neolithic era and the future period. Today will be the yesterday by this time tomorrow, Carolina said in her crumpling voice. There was no food to eat inside the forest. No one dared stay in their homes since the armies or rebels with ease could trap people inside their home, village, city, or neighborhood and kill them. All of them have evolved into herbivorous and carnivorous being in order to survive in the forest. They had no choice but to consume any green vegetation or pests, earthworms, termites, grasshoppers, and crickets, whether they were living or dead. The male children were always afraid of being apprehended and coerced into joining any of the gangs or insurgents. They were always burrowing and hiding in the dark. However, malnutrition had taken over their skins, consuming them with heat and illnesses, and the hunger was constantly intolerable. Anyone that has the male organ who comes across the rebels or army never remains the same afterward. They were either recruited by the rebels or killed by either the army or rebels. The few male survivors had lost respect and faith completely. No one could say whom next the bell would toll for. Strangely, they developed the courage to walk in the pathway of the line of the Devil Gate to survive. At the birth of the new morning, while it was still dark, Carolina and Agnes packed their little tattered clothes and joined the panicky, haggard survivors moving away from BR Island in search of a place that might give them life and peace of fresh air. They covered their noses with pieces of dirty torn clothes as they walked past ripped skeletons and dead bodies that decorated the island, laid decomposing with stinking smells and unattended, their protected noses inhaling fractions of the smells emitting from the human carcasses all over the place. The conflict has displaced farmers and destroyed farmlands and markets. The troops and rebels could kill anything that moves that was not of interest to them. For several hours, they traversed new landscapes as the scorching harmattan cold pounded down on them. They moved on in circle of dusts, expecting the people in the front to lead them to their next stop. But something was causing Agnes's heart to race. What about the people that chose to remain behind, Carolina? What prevents them from not wanting to flee? If they stay, they are all at high risk of dying, Agnes asked. Yes, Agnes, in actuality, some people will always choose to remain in their communities even in the face of severe strife, while some people are more risk-tolerant, others are risk-averse. Both those evacuating and those remaining are at risk of bombing, death, or injury. We are drifting to an unknown place, and we can't forecast what will happen there, Carolina complimented. Everything seems different from what I had imagined. There is no past to run into, and we are uncertainly walking into an unknown future, Carolina held. Let us be hopeful, Agnes. One can die in so many ways in a war region. Some people are dying, and others are surviving. The bombing and shelling are mysteries. It is something that I can't explain, and this sometimes gets me upset. I doubt if I am one of the lucky ones. Maybe it is not yet my time, Carolina assumed. For the sake of vanity, let the war end, Agnes said silently. They walked into the cold, and in the dusty paths they walked along with other people fleeing the war zone, hoping to reach Bunce Island if possible and as soon as possible. They lost everything during the journey. Many fell victim to diseases, some so weakened by hunger and lack of sleep that they couldn't continue the journey, hence falling to the earth forever, some serving as prey to strange mystified animals. The morning stars giving way to the sun, the wise see the moon in the afternoon only with their gifted third eyes. The children were the most severely affected, and were dying every time and every day. Some children had started to exhibit kwashiorkor, with soft, fluffy ginger hair and nearly fleshless skulls. They had enlarged tummies and oversized legs and ankles, where the flesh had begun to peel off like the skin of a tomato right out of the pot. A woman, no longer feeling the warmth of her baby body, she was moving by the side of the road amongst the crowd, swaying slowly from side to side. She covered her infant head with a shawl. The crowing of a rooster in a broad daylight might not be a negative sign after all. She splashed in the pool of dust, her bare feet stirring the sand. She was a teenaged woman, not more than 70 years old, unable to locate herself. It was the war that had killed her spirit, yet she could not die. As she walked, she stomped her feet on the earth and cries. They lost everything during the journey. Many fell victim to diseases, some so weakened by hunger and lack of sleep that they couldn't continue the journey, hence falling to the earth forever, some serving as prey to strange mystified animals. The morning stars giving way to the sun, the wise see the moon in the afternoon only with their gifted third eyes. The children were the most severely affected, and were dying every time and every day. Some children had started to exhibit kwashiorkor, with soft, fluffy ginger hair and nearly fleshless skulls. They had enlarged tummies and oversized